Hey folks, Eric from Hit Subscribe here, and I am doing yet another edition of the freelancer Q&A that I do. This time around, I am doing it from a new location, which actually seems to have pretty good lighting. We are in Quincy, Massachusetts, where we are going to be spending about 2 months this fall, taking in the leave changing in the region and so on and so forth. So that's fun. So I will be here for a little while recording these weekly videos. Anyway, the question I have here this week is, should you cap the length of discovery calls or even charge for them? So just real quick, for anyone watching, what do we mean by that? The person asking the question, like, what are we talking about? The idea is generally for a services type engagement, which is generally what a freelancer is doing. If you are doing custom work, labor, freelancing, you will usually have what's called a discovery call. I mean, you might not think of it that way, but it's basically the initial sales type conversation you have, and maybe you'll do this as its own call, or maybe you will have your like sales pitch and discovery combined into a single call. Whatever the case may be, you will at some point when talking to a prospect, you will learn about what they're trying to do, what they want to pay you to do, and so on and so forth. So this process is called discovery. You are discovering what it is they're looking for from you, why they want to pay you, and so on and so forth. And this can take a lot of different forms and be structured in a lot of different ways. But the gist is you have to figure out what the task at hand is before you actually start executing that task. And the question here then becomes, so if you're doing that call, if you're trying to discover what the client needs or wants from you, should you kind of time box that? Should you cap it or even charge the client for this type of work? And my answer to that is a pretty hard no. You shouldn't cap or charge for that. And I'll get into the why behind that, but I definitely would not recommend doing that in pretty strong terms. So I guess maybe in order to speak to why somebody would ask this or why you might think about doing this, I would kind of like turn it around and ask you as the question asker, or if you're wondering about this watching the video, like what problem are you trying to solve by doing this? So here's what I mean. Like, let's say that you're the one commissioning services. You want to, have a plumber out to do some plumbing work at your house. So you call a plumber and you're trying to kind of explain what's wrong and what you need. And then the plumber turns around and says, well, if I'm going to listen to you on the phone, you're going to have to pay me. It's not a particularly great experience that you're having in, consuming the service. In order for the plumber to do their job, they need to understand what the problem is. You have to explain that to them. Usually with services, that's kind of implied to be just part of the sales process. So you call the plumber and they don't charge you to listen to what your problem is. They just listen to your problem, and then they make a decision as to whether or not to work with you, what to charge you, etc. Maybe they give you an estimate. It can kind of go from there, but it is generally not standard practice for anyone who is in services to charge a client just to hear about what's going on. It's not that it never happens. Maybe some high-end in-demand lawyers might do stuff like that, but it's not super common for that to happen. It's generally assumed that understanding what the client wants to do, what they need, is part of just how you discover stuff about their business enough to earn your living. So it is not the expected course of action. And I guess what I'm getting at is if you're proposing this, there's got to be some reason. It's not the normal thing you would assume when you hang out your shingle freelancing. If you're, building websites for people, usually somebody calls you up and says, hey, I want a website built, and you're kind of happy to have the interest. So you start to say, all right, tell me about it. What do you want to do? Because what you're anticipating is having a phone call, 2, 3, and then doing, $10 or $100,000 or something worth of business. So by default, those calls are worth it, even if they don't all pan out. And I can do link on YouTube if I can find it, where I've talked before about the sales and discovery process and how there is kind of this conceptual funnel shape. So basically, if you're going to close, 10 pieces of business, you probably need to have 30, 40, 50 sales calls, because some sales calls will work and some won't. That's just the way it goes. It's the way other freelancers are going to work. Everybody is working this way, where you're going to hear people out and then you're going to give them a proposal, and they may agree to the proposal, and then you do hopefully a good bit of business with them. So if you're going in another direction and saying that you want to cap how long people will talk to you during this discovery process, or even charge them for it, understand right out of the gate that you're putting a pretty big damper on the amount of business that you're actually going to win. So a lot of people that are in services, freelancers out there, probably would come and say, I'm having trouble getting anyone to agree to a proposal I'm writing. Now imagine if you turn around and say, like, all right, well, not only do we have to do this like song and dance of discovery, but I'm going to make you pay for it. Your win rate is going to go through the floor. So there has to be some pain you're having in order to make you contemplate this. And I can think of two. So for everybody watching, this was not explained to me by the person asking this question. This is probably like, I should get a more like recent backlog of these or something, is I kind of forget even the conversations that were taking place around them. But so anyway, I don't know exactly what the pain is here, but I can only think of maybe two. One would be pretty speculative, I would think, which is, I'm worried that I'm giving away this valuable knowledge I have for free. So maybe in the you build websites for people, the worry is that they're going to get on the phone with you or a Zoom call or whatever in person, and they're going to really pick your brain about how to build a website. So it's going to be like an information or an instructional session masquerading as discovery. You're worried that you're going to be giving away your secret sauce on discovery if the discovery process goes on for too long, or if they ask you too many questions or what have you. So you're worried that you're going to be giving the good stuff away for free. That's one. The other one would be that you're worried that your time is being wasted. That one seems like it'd be less speculative. Maybe you're doing discovery call after discovery call, and people are just not closing business with you, so you feel like your time is being wasted. So I'll address each of those in turn. The first one is you're worried about giving it away for free. And this seems like the kind of thing that a pretty new freelancer might do, or maybe you have one or two really long-term clients and you just don't try to close a lot of business, and you're worried that somebody is going to essentially milk you for free information. To that, I would say, first and foremost, really, like, you are worried that you're going to talk to them on a Zoom call for an hour, and that during that hour, something you could have made a lot of money off of is going to be surfaced and they're just going to go. So I guess, like, I would say, if I were talking to somebody live, like, walk me through this. So somebody is like, hey, I want a website built. And your worry is that over the course of an hour or two, you're going to inadvertently teach them programming and how to build a website, and then they're just going to go do it instead of paying you. Is it something like that? Like, you're worried they're going to treat you as free advice, or even like a free instructor in something? Because that seems kind of far-fetched. And like, I doubt that's going to happen. And then on the flip side, if you're worried that in the course of an hour or two of calls, they're going to find something that completely solves their problem, and then they're not going to pay you for it, how much value are you really creating there if you can help them solve their problem over the course of an hour or two pretty easily? Now, the answer could be a lot. And if the answer to that is a lot of value, then you probably ought to think about maybe productizing a service and actually having that phone call of an hour or two be the thing that you offer. So I guess what I'm saying is this, like, there's an old adage in consulting that there's a consultant that gets called into a manufacturing floor. The plant is broken, nothing's working, and the customer is losing, $1 million a day. And they bring the consultant in, and the consultant takes a look around and says, I know exactly how to fix your problem. It'll cost you $100,000 and I'll fix your problem. And so the client agrees to this, obviously. And then the consultant just goes and presses like a single button or hits a hammer in like a place and fixes the problem immediately in 2 seconds. And the client then says, that took you only 2 seconds to do. Why would I pay you $100,000? And the consultant says, you're not paying me $100,000 for the time I spent doing it. You're paying me $100,000 for the lifetime I spent knowing exactly where to hit the hammer or press the button or whatever. And there is wisdom to that. Like, it's not really about the time. It's about the knowledge. It's that the client has this catastrophic problem, and however long it takes, you know how to set them right. If that's the case, what you should be selling is that 1 hour phone call where you set them right. So in this case, you're still not charging for discovery. You're charging for a productized service or productized consulting where you very clearly define the problem. And with an hour spent with you, you can help them solve it. So now you're not selling discovery, let's call it. You're selling a solution to a problem. So if you can do that, by all means do it, but you're no longer charging for discovery. So this is kind of moot. You have stood up this very specialized piece of consulting. Absolutely go do that. So that's kind of one, side of the question that I was asking, which is how valuable is whatever you're telling them really? If the answer is very valuable, then sell that hour of consulting. If the answer is that what you're telling them over the course of an hour isn't all that valuable, then why are you charging them for it? I think the most common case with a freelancer is you're speculatively worried that somebody is going to like cheat you somehow. So they're going to get on the phone and they're going to ask you a bunch of questions about how to get a website built or whatever. And then they're going to take that information. Maybe they learn from you what questions to ask another freelancer. So you're less worried about giving away free value, let's call it. And you're almost more worried about being jilted or something, that somebody is going to get one over on you. And I think you really need to get over that. Because if you are doing discovery and during the course of discovery, you help the client understand something crucial, that's super valuable for business later. So maybe during the course of discovery, you actually help the client realize they don't even need to build a website. Then yeah, you haven't gotten the business, but you've helped them save $10,000 or $100,000 by not building a website they don't need. So in general, I would look at the time you spend during discovery as a kind of pennies in heaven free consulting that you're doing. I always do a very consultative type of discovery process. And often my goal is to almost disqualify business. I'm saying, okay, what have you tried so far? Why pay me to do this? I cost a lot of money. I'm going to charge you a lot of money. Couldn't you do it yourself? Couldn't you do this? Have you tried calling somebody cheaper? And so on and so forth. And the reason you do that is because you want to make sure that it's a good fit and you want to generally help the client, and surfacing easy things they could do to help themselves is a good part of helping the client. So I would make your discovery really more aimed at giving away that kind of free value. And only after kind of a lot of back and forth do you agree to engage. And that's how it should be. They're going to pay you, 5 or 6 figures worth of money. So you ought to make sure that it's worth it for them, that it's the right type of engagement. And so if discovery leads to them getting free value, that's great, because you know what they're going to do next time they have a problem they want somebody to help them solve is they're going to call you. You already helped them solve their problem for free. Think of how good a job you're going to do when they're paying you. So I would really get over this idea that the client is going to like get one over on you or something. If you're able to help people for free in an hour or two of discovery, then great. They're going to trust you later. And you could always take like, hey, I just, help people for free for an hour or two. Then you're not charging for discovery next time. Just say like, all right, well, I'm going to offer productized consulting. Make your website say that. You're not selling them discovery. You are selling them a seminar or a workshop or whatever you want to call it. So that all addresses the motivation that you're worried about giving away for free. Don't worry about that. I wouldn't. If it's a good problem to have, if during the course of an hour or two, you can produce something so valuable that it has like monetary worth, you have a good problem to have. You just need to figure out how to position that and how to sell it. The other thing is wasted time. And this seems like it's probably, if this was the reason you were asking this, coming from a more acute position, and wasted time, meaning you're having a lot of calls with tire kickers, or you're having a lot of calls with, prospects that wind up being bad fits, or you're having a lot of calls that seem good, but then they ghost you. That is a whole other set of problems, but you're not going to solve that by trying to charge people. None of those problems are going to be solved by charging. They're just more going to be solved by refining your process. So for instance, if you take the case of tire kickers, a lot of people get on a call with you and you're talking about selling them custom app dev of a website, and then they're like, oh man, but I only wanted to spend $500. You have a big mismatch here. You don't want to build somebody a website for $500. I'm assuming, I don't know, maybe you're really, really efficient at it and you can do it in half an hour, but I'm guessing you have a big budget mismatch there. You don't solve that by forcing them to pay you, or trying to force them to pay you. If they're only going to spend $500 on a website, they're not going to spend any money on a discovery call with you. And you might take that as, yeah, good, then I should charge them, because that will discourage them from wasting my time. Well, yeah, but you don't need to charge them. You could just put up on your website that your minimum engagement size is, $20,000 or something. Then they're not going to bother to call you, and you're not building up bad will there, or seeming, penny wise and pound foolish. So in general, there are a lot of things you can do to make your discovery process more efficient and less likely to result in time of yours wasted. Make your marketing good. If I can dig it up on YouTube, I will, but I've talked about how marketing is really the process of qualifying and disqualifying business. Make things clear on your website. Who is a good fit and who isn't? What kind of work do you do? The more clear you make that, and the more you're clarifying things like that up front, the less you're going to have your time wasted on misunderstandings of the nature of the engagements that you do. So having good marketing can be a part of that. I would also suggest, if you're having misunderstandings over things like cost or pricing that you do, make your pricing transparent. You could even feed this type of thing holistically into having an FAQ on your website. So if you're getting the same misunderstandings again and again, put them up on your website. Like, who do you serve? Businesses willing to spend $20,000 or more. What languages and tech stacks do you use? I'm only Rails. I don't do PHP. So each time you have a misunderstanding, document it somewhere so you can save yourself and your prospects time next time around. You can also go one step further and have a pre-discovery call questionnaire or something. We actually, I think, are still doing that. I'm not on sales calls anymore, but as far as I know, Sherry, who does our sales, is still doing a pre-discovery call questionnaire, and that can be great for filtering good and bad fit out. So, here are a series of things that I ask you to fill out in like a Google form or whatever the case may be. So for you, pre-discovery, a client or prospect wants to have a call with you. You say, great, let's set up a call next week. In the meantime, here's something I'm just going to ask you about on the call anyway, if you don't fill it out, so we can maybe help the conversation be more productive if you're willing to fill this out in advance. What is your budget? What is your preferred tech stack? What are your goals, etc.? And then if they fill this out and they say they want to spend $500 and they want a PHP site, you can just write back and say, hey, I'm going to cancel the call because I actually only do Rails sites for 20K plus. Hey, problem solved. Now you didn't have to try to charge for a discovery call. You just avoided both of you and the prospect wasting your time. Automation in general. So the more you can structure the discovery process, maybe it's one call, maybe it's a series of calls. You could automate sending out the discovery pre-questionnaire. You could send them to your website for FAQs. The more you script the sales and discovery process, the less the client can go off the rails with asking you a lot of questions, treating as an interview, wasting your time. The more structure you create, the less room they have to create structure. And the more structure that you create, the easier it becomes for you to weed out bad fit and not have time wasted. And that's time wasted through miscommunication, but even time wasted through asking redundant questions that they could fill out in a form. So by making your process more efficient and better at surfacing good and bad fit, the less time you're going to have wasted overall. And by the way, that exercise, getting good at filtering out good and bad fit up front ahead of engagements, it really helps focus your positioning and your offering and just make you better at business in general. So all in, I recommend doing that. So I'll close philosophically by saying I'm a big believer, this is my management consulting background here, in creating like the right set of incentives and aligning those incentives. If you are feeling the pain of discovery process where you're being ghosted or you're having your time wasted, you should make yourself feel that pain and not the prospects, because by making yourself feel that pain, you will create better systems that make a better experience for everyone all in. If you go the opposite route and you try to make the prospects feel that pain, it will almost certainly result in you just not really closing business. And maybe you don't need business and it's a flex that you're like, hey, I'm so important that you have to pay me $100 if you want to do discovery. I mean, good for you, I guess, but that's not really a great way to run a business. If you ever want to scale up or you want to hire, build an equity type business, doing a flex over I don't need your business isn't the best look. And in general, the optics on charging for discovery are kind of bad. It like I could get where as kind of an advanced beginner, you might think like, oh, I have enough cachet, or I have enough in my book of business that I can do this and get away with it. And you might think that looks good, but honestly, it really doesn't. It just, you kind of look cheap and you look like you're not really interested in helping your clients. You look, I don't know, like you're playing a short game. If somebody were to tell me, if I were going to like through my business commission services and somebody was like, oh, well, I charge for discovery because time is money and my time is valuable, I would think to myself like, all right, pal, good luck with that, and it wouldn't be because I couldn't afford it. It would just seem like I was dealing with an amateur, frankly. Businesses, and I've talked about this before at times, but your business is really, you could think of it as three systems. One system is your system for acquiring business. The second system is your system for delivering fulfillment of the business. And then the third one is collecting payment. So you are bringing in customers, you are fulfilling the business, and then collecting payment. And your bigger business is those three systems working in concert. If you are charging prospects, you are taking that first system, the one that brings in customers, and you are, sticking all kinds of gunk in the works, and you are gumming up the whole bigger system, which is to get as many customers as possible in and fulfill it. Imagine, if you will, that you hired someone to do your sales and you were not charging for discovery calls, and you were paying someone to bring in business so you could fulfill it and make money. You were paying a salesperson. And that salesperson told you one day that they had made a decision and they were tired of having their time wasted by bad prospects. So they had implemented a policy where they were going to charge prospects so that their time wasn't wasted. Would you be happy with that salesperson? Would you give that person a raise? I wouldn't. I can't imagine that you would be happy with that running a business, is to them say, well, my time is so valuable that I don't want it wasted. And I got tired of being ghosted, so I decided to start charging people. If you were the owner of that business, you would and should fire that salesperson immediately. So don't be that salesperson for your own business. It's just ridiculous. So, I'm closing on a strong philosophical note there. It may seem like a sort of like valuable flex or something, but it really isn't. It's just a way to torpedo your business and basically assure that it never goes anywhere. If you are feeling pain, giving away free value, having your time wasted, bad fit, miscommunication, ghosted, and all that, address those pains in a more mature, productive way for your business than trying to plant a flag and saying like, well, I'm going to charge you for discovery. Just please don't do that. So hopefully that was helpful, and I will catch you all next time.